If you look for it, every day has cause for celebration. Celebrate a friend for their promotion, baby wedding, life thing. Celebrate yourself for keeping the couch warm. It's no easy feat, especially if it's a big couch. Or maybe you just want to celebrate living in 2023, where you can get beer, wine, and spirits delivered from Drizzly in under 60 minutes without leaving said couch. So download the Drizzly app or go to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com and get your favorite drinks delivered today.
Hey, it's Mistress Carrie, reporting for duty from MCHQ for episode 86 of the Mistress Carrie podcast. This episode of the podcast is sponsored by Digital Federal Credit Union, better known by all of us by now as simply DCU. And since their beginnings as a credit union for the employees of Digital Equipment Corporation back in 1979, DCU has never lost sight of its roots of being a not-for-profit financial cooperative owned by and operated by and for their members. And a lot of things can change in 40 years, but some things remain constant, like DCU's unwavering commitment to provide exceptional service and to make a positive impact in the communities where their members live and work. And no matter what their members' unique goals are, DCU is committed to helping them the only way they know how, the DCU way, which consists of 3 simple philosophies that guide every DCU team member. People come first, do the right thing, and make a difference. And giving back is central to what they do. And I know this because I've been working with DCU for almost 2 decades. And I've seen them wrap their arms around a project or an organization and roll up their sleeves and get involved and do the right thing. For more details, head to DCU.org. I also wanted to put a plug in for the Mistress Carrie Backstage Pass on Patreon. You can click the Patreon logo at mistresscarrie.com or go straight to patreon.com/mistresscarrie. Backstage pass holders get exclusive access to photos and travel logs. They submit interview questions for podcast guests, get exclusive access to concert tickets, and we do an exclusive live stream every month. And I wanted to say what's up to Backstage Pass holders Paula, Rachel, Kathy, Jane, Annette, Ash, Keith, Debbie, Linda, Jamie, and Heather. You guys rock. Okay, this week's episode has a lot of firsts. Phil Varone is an accomplished drummer. He's a music producer and a songwriter, and his career spans some 3 decades. Phil is best known for his work with bands like Saigon Kick, Skid Row, Vince Neil, Jakey Lee's band, Red Dragon Cartel, and he's got a new project called Panic Boom. He's also featured in a new documentary called 30 Years a Drummer. He's a video editor, a centerfold. Yeah, wait till you hear that story. A television and adult film actor, and he even has his own line of sex toys. Well, he used to anyway. I told you, this episode is a lot of firsts. Phil and I got up super early on a Saturday morning and had coffee together. And this guy is freaking hilarious, and he doesn't hold back. I had never met him before, but our common friend said that we would get along amazingly well, and they were absolutely right. We had a blast. He's an open book that is not ashamed about the struggles he's had in his life, and he's also pretty humble about a lot of the successes he's had as well. We talked about everything, from Oprah to porn to drumming and the Beatles, and that's just the start. So allow me to introduce you to Phil Varone.
Hey, what's up? This is Sully from Godsmack. Strap on those boots, baby, because you are now in the trenches of the war room with the one and only Mistress Carrie right here on the Mistress Carrie podcast.
What's up? This is Joe Rogan, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie.
Her hair so lovely, pretty eyes.
Hey, this is Brent from Shinedown, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie. Hey, Carrie, go put your bra on, girl.
Hey, this is Steven Tyler, and you be listening to the baddest bitch in Boston, Mistress Carrie.
What's up? This is Aaron from Stanford.
Cobain, and you're listening to Mistress Carrie.
Hi, everybody. This is Dave Grohl from the Foo Fighters, and you're listening to the one, the only Mistress Carrie.
Hey, this is David from the band Disturbed, and you're listening to the baddest bitch in Boston, Mistress Carrie.
Hi, Bruce Dickinson here from Iron Maiden. Yes, indeed, Miss Whiplash herself, Mrs. Carrie, is here to unchain your brain.
Hi, this is Flea from the Red Hot Chili Peppers. You're listening to Mistress Carrie.
This is Dennis Leary. You are listening to my favorite, Mistress Carrie.
Hey, this is Corey from Stone Sour, and you have the privilege of listening to Mistress Carrie. Oh, God. Oh, yeah.
Now you know you're being recorded, Phil. You're
Got
on the
it.
record.
I got it.
Good morning.
I don't want to say anything. Uh-oh.
What?
Oh, sorry. I've never gotten in trouble before. There we go.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Cheers to your coffee. I know I got you up early on a Saturday.
Yes. Boy, look at the size of that cup. That thing has an undertow. That is nice.
We don't mess around here in Boston. We like things big, loud, and obnoxious, including our coffee.
Oh, so well. Yeah, I like my beverage with a low tide. Thank you.
You're on the West Coast, right? So you're up early.
Yes. I'm in lovely Las Vegas, Nevada.
There's a lot of rock and roll getting made in Vegas these days.
There's a lot of bands from here. There's a lot of musicians here. Musicians, because it's so close to LA. Yeah, it's a nice, easy commute, and it's probably a quarter of the price. So that's what drew that really is what attracted me over here. And but contrary to popular belief, there's actually beautiful things to do here. Because most of us residents, we don't go near the Strip.
Yeah, that's what I've heard.
We don't like that.
It's just that's where the tourists are.
Yeah, we don't like those dirty, nasty. I'm just kidding. No, there's amazing hiking here. Yeah, believe it or not. This is how Rockstar is getting old when we're talking about hiking.
Yeah, right.
20 years ago, I'm talking about doing blow off of, a boob. Now I'm like, I'll tell you, Red Rock is nice. Yeah. So anyways.
This time of year, it's beautiful, and there's a place you can get scones. They're delicious.
It's gorgeous. And the funny part is, there's this really weird kind of, is the word juxtaposition, right? Where you you're on this beautiful hike, but yet you could still see the Strip and all the mayhem.
Right.
So it's this weird kind of,
You're in this very safe distance away.
Very safe.
I can do Vegas for about 4 to 5 days.
I cannot.
And then I have to get out of there. And it's the same with LA. I can handle LA for about 4 to 5 days, and then I'm way too East Coast for that.
Yeah, LA is it's like Vegas is mayhem. LA is just everyone's full of crap. Yeah. So it's really kind of people are so Hollywood over there, and it turns your stomach sometime. But a lot of my friends are there, a lot of business. So I think the newer Vegas is not too bad. The younger folks aren't as bad as the older Vegas, older LA, where everyone's just kissing ass, and it's still a lot going on. But I think now that they took down Weinstein and there's no more casting couch, technically, I think things have probably calmed down just a hair. Yeah, I would think, because that's just a disgusting everything, whatever was going on there. So
it's unreal that it took this long for all of that stuff to come to light. I mean, it's kind of like everybody knew it was happening, but nobody really wanted to say anything about it.
Well, that's the LA thing, though, because if someone said something, you don't work anymore. Kind of like what's going on in the government. They're a bunch of cowards, and so the people in LA. But when people are getting hurt, you know what? You got to be a martyr, and you got to tell somebody. And I think that, in Hollywood, that stuff was starting in the 40s. Once talkies started and they had all these starlets. And if you go through old Hollywood, it's kind of fascinating, because all through old Hollywood and over the hills, like Runyon Canyon, all those places, they had these little bungalows that the studio executives had their kind of mistresses in. And that's the way it was back then. And everybody shut up. No one said a word. I mean, think about politics when JFK was president. Having sex with Marilyn Monroe. No one dare to talk about that. Today they would be camped out, getting pictures, and it's such a different time. And that's the way I think Hollywood was. And it took so long for people to finally, tell on them, if you will. I'm happy they did. But still, it's we still deal with it in our world today. So
I've been fortunate that 30 years in rock and roll, and when the Me Too movement really hit, people would come to me and say, "Oh, I bet you have crazy stories or whatever. And there really wasn't a lot of that for me. And the only thing I can attribute it to is that people were too fucking scared of me. So I guess that's a good thing. When you're a big enough bitch.
Right. Well, either that or you turn into a challenge. That's the rock star way. It's like, okay, well, she's created, no one can get to her. I can get to her. Then you just lay them out and they come back with, the bloody lip and you're like, what happened? Like nothing, Yeah. But look, I that was my thing years ago too, being in a band. We're CD rock stars, or we think we are. So you're always going to attempt to I'm not talking about rape, but you're perverted. Everyone's perverted. And
anybody that's read Motley Crue's book knows exactly what you're talking about. I mean, they made a movie out of it, and it was like rated G compared to the stories that really happened.
Yeah, I mean, people talk about drugs and chicks and all that stuff, and I know, like, I was talking with Ted Nugent last week, and that was our thing when we started. It was girls. Ted obviously started 20 years before me, but the point, Gene Simmons never put anything in his body. Me, unfortunately, I put the drugs and the women and everything and the booze. But those guys, it was about chicks, and that's the way I was when I first started. It was all about girls. So I don't think it was. I was always an opportunist, because in real life, there's no way that any of these girls would want to have sex with someone like me. But because I was in a band, it kind of worked that way.
Well, isn't that why you want to become a musician in the first place?
Absolutely. No doubt.
You're not big enough to play football and date the cheerleaders. You got to find a way to get girls. And if you're musically inclined.
Yeah. I was just talking about this because when I was in high school, I posted my high school senior picture on Facebook the other day, and I look like a cross between Freddie Prinze Sr., Tony Orlando, and I had the Breck girl feathered hair.
Oh, yes.
It was brutal, right? And my lip was a dirty mustache, and I'm like, I wonder why I never got laid in high school. And and then all of a sudden I played with Tony Cortese, who is in my Panic Boom band to this day. He was in the first band I ever played with, and we played the talent show. And ever since I played the talent show, girls looked at me different. I knew then there was some kind of power with drumming. And then the first show that Saigon Kick played back in 1988 was at this club called the Treehouse. And the Treehouse, it was like, maybe 20 people, whatever. There wasn't many people there. It was our first show ever. And I come off the stage, and there's a girl just like waiting for me with open arms. And I was like, this is great, because I didn't even have to work for it.
This girl right here.
Oh, look at that.
That's me. That's my high school picture. That girl was a massive Saigon Kick fan right there.
Wow. And you have contributed to the ozone layer with that hair, because I have too.
There's a whole hole in it that's dedicated to Mistress Carrie for sure.
How about this? Aquanet Insta, what was it? The super extra hold.
In the white can? Oh, the white and pink can.
You just did two of them.
Yep.
Oh man, I used to have like at least a 1-inch film on everything in my room.
Yeah.
Just from that stuff.
You had to take a razor to clean the mirror off.
Basically. Yeah. That's so funny. Only people that have lived that understand.
That's right.
But that was a fun time though. That was, but that's, when you talk about it's sex, drugs, and rock and roll, that's what it was back then, and it was, I think that I got caught up more in that than even making money. Although the misconception is that you got a record deal, you're gonna be rich, and you're gonna have a mansion and all that fun stuff. And
that's what it looks like on MTV.
Well, that's what it always looked like. Even later on in life, when they did Cribs and they did all that stuff. Smoke and mirrors. That's the thing. But the one thing that was real was girls and having fun. We definitely did that. We were broke as hell, but we had sex and we had fun and we played some good rock and roll. So you take the good in the bad.
Your first band was in Florida, but are you originally from there?
No. I was born in Long Island, New York.
So you got an East Coast. You got an East Coast layer to you for sure.
A little bit, but I moved out of there when I was 12, out of Long Island, and it was funny because I guess the origin of drumming for me came from New York, because when I was in grade school, about fourth grade, I believe, they came around. They said, hey, we have a music program. Would you like to play? And for me, I wanted to play trumpet because my buddy Richie Goodwin played trumpet, and he was like cool to me. And I remember his name, which is weird because I don't remember yesterday because, of dementia. No, but, and I always thought like trumpet players would get all the chicks. Even back then in grade school, I'm thinking.
You couldn't have been more wrong, man. You couldn't have been more wrong.
Well, especially because picking drums was definitely the right choice.
Yes.
But I couldn't play trumpet because I had operations on my ears. So any type of pressure in my head I would have gone deaf. So drumming, and I know it sounds weird, but if you put earplugs in and stuff, there's no pressure on your eardrums. So I started playing percussion. And then my father bought me a drum kit when I was probably about 10. So back in 77. And I still have that kit today.
Do you really have it?
Absolutely. Yeah.
What is it?
And I feel it's a mix. I don't know. It's a mix match of everything. And I featured it in Drumhead magazine because there was an issue called Ensnared, and you talk about your favorite drums and what it meant to you. And all the drummers are like, well, I use this on so-and-so song. I use this on, and mine was like, well, this is my first kit that my dad bought me. And this is my, so yeah, I after that, when I moved to Florida, I didn't want to play drums. I was playing golf. I wanted to be a professional golfer. And that doesn't get you laid either in school.
When you're good at it later, but not in school. Yeah, no, you're totally
PGA
right.
Tour, here I am. I'm like, it's like Freddie Prinze, like leaning up against a golf club in my yearbook. It doesn't work.
No.
Not good. But
and parents, when their kid decides to get into music, I would think the biggest fear in the world would that you either play the drums or the violin, because the learning curve is painful for everyone else in the house.
Violin would probably be worse.
Oh.
I think about the Money Pit, that movie, when she's up there practicing and Tom Hanks is outside running around like with bees are chasing him.
Yeah.
My parents were saints, okay, because they gave me not only tell me this is when people tell me about their stories that they don't like their parents, or I'm like, what are you even talking about? Like I don't even understand that world. And I know it happens, sadly. But my parents, when I graduated high school, I wanted to be a drummer, but I had a scholarship, and I went to my parents. I'm like, I like to play drums, and turned down this scholarship because it was with Westinghouse, and the computer a drafting system had just come out, CAD, and that's what I was studying. I was going to be an architect, really, and
never be able to work with that.
Never. Right. And it's artistic and it's great. And I worked for Westinghouse when I was in high school because I was advanced in that, like I was really, that's why they offered me a scholarship. And ever since in 1983, 2 years before I graduated, when Motley Crue hit MTV, I was like, what is this? I couldn't believe what I was seeing. My jaw hit the ground. I remember the first day MTV aired and I was just like, oh my God. Like, because up until then, all we did was hear artists like through a speaker, like we just sat there and, you listen to your radio.
You didn't feel like you knew anything about them unless you saw them in a fan mag or something, or you actually got to go and see them live. But it's like the band didn't exist if they weren't on the stage.
Yeah. I mean, I thought for the longest time that there was bands like in rehearsal. And then when they played on the radio, like a light went on and then just started playing. I didn't even understand the concept of records, like it was such a weird, like, I don't know what I was thinking. So when I saw Motley, I was like, okay, I want to be that dude right there. Yeah. And then that's what started it. So when I went to my parents and I was like, hey, I like to play drums. And they said, okay.
I can't believe they said, okay.
And they said this though, my father was a, working man till the day he died. Just a proud Italian and a wonderful human. And he goes, you got to get a job. And I said, okay. So I graduated like a couple of days later. I was on a lawn service in South Florida, making $4 an hour under the table. And let me tell you, $160 a week to a teenager is righteous cash. So I thought I was living like Thanksgiving. And my parents gave me Saturday. They gave me a chunk of time on Saturday. They would go shopping, and I could practice my drums in the house, and they just let me play. And they were the driving force because, then I started piecing drums together. So the first day when I got a record deal back in 1990, and I was at the house, and UPS brought me a free drum kit, from my endorsement, and I opened it with my dad. I'm like, huh? Right?
I made it.
I thought I did anyways.
Yeah.
But I have a funny story because I was just touring with Jake E. Lee with Red Dragon Cartel right before the COVID hit back in 19. And one of the stops was Long Island, New York. And it was a short distance from my home, my childhood home. So my sister had flown in for the show. Her and I go visit the block. And everything looks a lot smaller.
Oh, yeah.
When you're bigger, right? It's like that place used to be like Times Square to me. It was massive when I was a kid. So our next door neighbor, the Donnellys, who is like Eddie Donnelly, was my best friend. Like you have his parents, who I absolutely love and adore, are still alive. Which I hope they stay alive forever. They're just wonderful people.
They still live there?
Still live there. So my sister knocks on the door, and they answer the door, and they drop their mouths dry because we haven't been there. I haven't been there in 30 years.
Wow.
And my sister goes, my brother's in the car. And I come walking out, and they're like, Philip, oh my God. So we went in there, and Tom Donnelly, the father, goes, I'm really proud of you. Because, we had like, every family was like our parents.
Right.
Back
then it was okay. You could get reprimanded by the neighbors, and it was fine.
Yes. Yeah. It was fine. Whatever house you were in, it was their rules.
That's right.
You respected that. Right. And Tom Donnelly said to me, it was real. I followed what Eddie told me, your career, and I've seen you, do success with your drums. He goes, I was shocked because when I used to listen to you play as a kid, you really sucked. And we started laughing because he had to hear it because I had the drum set back then. So it was kind of a full circle thing, but it was wonderful.
Did you learn about rock and roll from your parents and the Donnellys?
Yes.
Was that the soundtrack of what you heard growing up?
The soundtrack, my mother was Elvis. My father was the Beatles and comedy. My father put the first Richard Pryor record on. And the first one was That N-Word's Crazy. That was his first record. That's the first time I was exposed to comedy. Did the Library of
Congress just save that? That was in the list of recordings that they've archived for posterity is Richard Pryor.
That's probably one of the greatest, arguably one of the greatest recorded albums ever. I also had Red Fox. I had Cheech and Chong. My dad was very, very open with comedy. He loved comedy. In fact, my father took me to see Young Frankenstein in the theaters. That should tell you
your
kind
dad
of father.
Is cool, man. Your dad is
my
cool.
dad was the coolest person, and my mother, Elvis, like almost like unhealthy. So, and then back then, this is 70 in the 70s, 76, 77. I graduated 6th grade, and my parents gave me Kiss double platinum on 8-track and a slip and slide. It was the greatest graduation gift you can give your child, right? And my parents got that Columbia House. We were talking about that, laughing. Like, I go, remember the Columbia House deal? You get 4,000 records for a penny, right? Yeah. And then no artists get paid, and but
not much has changed.
Yeah, and exactly, nothing's changed. You just get it streaming now. Right. Nothing gets delivered. And they had all rock and roll. So I was exposed to Boston, ELO, Kansas, Beatles, Elvis, you name it. It was all on 8-track and records. So that's what I listened to in the house. And Kiss, of course. Kiss was my band back then. So yeah, they were the driving force with rock and roll. And it was kind of fun, and there's such patience and leeway with me.
I just found a picture of me when I was right around that age, and I had the Kiss bicentennial poster, with the flag. Yeah. They were all bloody, and then there's a Miss Piggy poster next to it. And I was like, well, that's the Muppets fantastic. And rock and roll, that's my childhood right there.
When we toured with Kiss in 2000, when I joined Skid Row, it was like my walls came to life. It was the most bizarre feeling, and it was weird because I went up to Gene Simmons and he goes, "You look like Trent Reznor with Tommy Lee's arms. And I said, thank you, Gene. And it was, and he was all in the paint, ready to go on stage. And, it was just, they were larger than life. They came out of my wall. This is a band I didn't have an inch of space on my walls.
Bon Jovi was like that for me.
Yeah. And so that was the most amazing. Then we toured with them for 7 months, 130 shows. And I had the greatest time with Gene. And it was just like this dream every day. Gene would come on. Before he went on, he would come into our dressing room, and he's in the full paint. He's the demon. And I was like, did you have the prune Danish today from catering? I'm like, no, I didn't. He was like, oh, it was very good. Yes. And we start talking recipes. He's like, my mom made. I'm like, wait, but you're the demon.
Yeah.
This is the coolest thing I've ever seen. And it was such a fan. Like I was a fanboy. And of course, Ace and Peter just tried to figure out ways to kill Gene during the show. So that was always fun. My favorite one was they were going to have a sniper in the back of the arena. And when Gene flew up for God of Thunder, after the blood, they were going to shoot him up in the rafters and just let his body fall on the stage like a puppet. And I thought that was the funniest thing I've ever heard. And they would just cackle, Ace would be, they're nuts.
Well, we live in a world now where Paul Stanley turned 70 years old last week.
Right. And let me tell you that's incredible. And here's the funny part. When the tour started, it was 2000. Gene just turned 51. And I was like, these old bastards, and I just turned 54. So I'm like, well, maybe they weren't that old.
Yeah, right. It's amazing how old you thought your parents were.
Right.
And then you get to the age that they were and you're like, oh my God, they weren't that old at all.
They weren't that old.
No.
But to us, man, I remember high school. When I graduated high school, I was thinking about the year 2000. I graduated in 85. And I'm like, God, in 2000, I'm going to be like 32. I would be like dead. That's so old, And you get to 30s, you're like, I'm not old, 40s, like, I'm really not old, So.
Does picking an outfit have you running a little too fashionably late? We get it. Great taste takes time. That's why Drizzly, the #1 app for alcohol delivery, has your back with the largest selection of beer, wine, and spirits delivered in under 60 minutes. Convenience never goes out of style. So if you need to spend some extra time in the mirror instead of at the store, download the Drizzly app or go to drizzly.com. That's DRIZLY.com today.
You had an amazing thing happen in your career with Saigon Kick, in that you get that record deal, you get that drum set, you think you made it, and then you get a song that goes from nothing into the stratosphere seemingly overnight.
Yeah, it did. Yeah.
Like, Love Is on the Way. What was that roller coaster like?
Well, it kind of sucked for a couple of reasons. And I'm very grateful that we were able to achieve something like that, because not many people could say they had, as Frank would say, I'd rather love than never loved at all. It's like a hit. I'd rather have a hit than never, ever have a hit at all, even though we're in the one-hit wonder book. But still, I was concerned about that song for a few reasons. One is that Saigon Kick is a very eclectic band. And with that, you have a record like The Lizard that had 14, 15 tracks on it. And Love Is on the Way was one of those tracks, only one. Everything else was heavy and grungy and hard rock and all that other stuff. So when grunge was making its changeover, the music business was going towards those bands, I just thought we can just go right in it. I mean, we were doing dual harmony stuff that Alice in Chains was doing, back in '88. We could fit right in. There was no didn't have to be a changing of the guards for us.
Dee Snider told me it was like getting a telegram that said, "No one wants what you do anymore. You're done."
Well, I remember driving. I had a rock star car back then because I had Love Is on the Way. It was a hit on one video. I'm thinking, I'm a rock star. I've made it. And then Smells Like Teen Spirit came on. And I'm like, I think I need to turn this thing around and drop it back off at the dealer because my career is over. And only because of the Love Is on the Way was such an extreme, different song that back then, if we had iTunes back then where you could just buy a single, it wouldn't have been that bad. But you had to buy the whole record. So the returns, and we just went through this with Extreme because we toured with Extreme for two tours.
Hometown Heroes here.
Right. And Extreme, in my opinion, is probably one of the greatest rock bands of all time.
Agreed.
And we toured Europe with them when More Than Words went #1. We were with them and we celebrated. It was amazing, right? And then when they got back to the States, Love Is on the Way went to #8. And they were celebrating with us and we were on tour with them. But one of the things that we talked about was the returns, because when people went and bought that Extreme record, they're thinking More Than Words. They got, they're thinking there's 12 cuts of More Than Words.
Right.
Because you got to remember, Extreme's fans loved them, but they crossed over.
Right.
Okay. So
soccer
that
moms
crossover,
were buying Extreme records thinking they were all these love ballads, and More Than Words isn't even a love song.
Not even a love song. Paul and I, Gary, would be like, so what did you do during that video shoot? Because I just stood at a bar and, tried and hit on the talent all day. That's all I did. I had nothing better to do. I mean, barely on the song, which is like, as I always say, universe's best. That's the universe's money shot to me. I'm going to give you a hit, no drums on it. Yeah. So there we go. But yeah, it was a weird thing.
Then he's got Wholehearted, where he's just got to stand there with the kick drum. And like a tambourine or something. Yeah,
and even when I talked to Pat Torpey, the late great Pat Torpey, and we same thing with Mr. Big, To Be With You. It was like the three of us, and you're talking about incredible drumming. Paul's an incredible drummer. Pat Torpey was probably one of the greatest drummers, and nothing. These are the songs that hit. Now, granted, Mr. Big had better, songs that hit, but for me, it was a weird thing. But I knew the minute I heard that song, I was like, I don't want to put it on the record. And because if it gets picked up, we're dead. And sure as shit, Matt and I were in the UK, I think, doing press. I forgot what it was. And Hostile Youth was our first single that we just finished a video for. 5 days in Mexico, the coolest video. And then we get word that a PD is playing Love Is on the Way. And I looked at the singer, Matt, and I go, enjoy this 15 minutes because it's going to be over soon.
Those damn radio people never wanting to follow the script.
Yeah, because if we would have hit with 2 or 3 grungier type songs, and there's some really great songs on our Lizard record, then Love Is on the Way wouldn't have been such a big blow.
Right.
But it was kind of like, it was a double-edged sword, man. It opened the doors and closed them at the same time. It was a very bizarre time. And the rest is history, because Saigon Kick was never a hair band. We never were categorized as a glam band. We were just a rock and roll band.
Well, there's a lot of bands that got sucked into that whole thing. Like Tesla got branded a hair band. They're one of my favorite bands ever. They are
Tesla.
Not a hair band.
Tesla is one of the greatest, another great rock band and sweethearts of guys. We toured with those guys. They're some of the greatest guys. And we got sucked in. And you know what it was? I believe wholeheartedly that it's 1, bad management, 2, just lazy record company people that didn't want to put their job on the line. Because, how many times we talk about in any profession, whether it's politics, whether it's Hollywood, whether it's the music industry, people have no friggin' backbones. They're a bunch of cowards, and they are not going to fight for a band knowing that their career is on the line. They just won't do it.
Well, back then it was a lot harder to be an independent artist because you needed someone to print the records and distribute them and all that. Whereas now, with technology, you can be an independent artist and do really, really well and tour and make music and be directly connected to your fans. But back in those days, nearly impossible.
That was it.
Yeah.
That was the norm. One of the great things about Panic Boom is we haven't been in a room together since '94. Just so that's the thing. Like we did a record with technology, and it's like it's really interesting. But the pandemic allowed us to do this, and for me, the pandemic was a learning time for me. All the drugs that I did, all the chicks that I was with, I never paid attention in the studio with the greatest producers of all time, Michael Wagner. What'd you call it? I just lost his name because he did the Fuel record. He was doing our Skid Row record. We had Ronnie Lottie, who's this great engineer from Sweden. All this stuff, I never paid attention because I was too busy trying to get drugs or run out with a chick. So I really, for all my time in the business, I really didn't know anything about recording other than recording, like my drums and stuff. So when pandemic hit, I just dove into studying, and I spent
did the
2
same
years.
thing.
Yeah. And I learned how to record, and I wrote songs. Like I didn't even know I had it in me. I really didn't, because it's something I never tapped into. So I just studied and tried to master Pro Tools. I'm a video editor as a profession. I direct music videos.
Video's way harder than audio. If you can do video, you can do audio.
Yeah, no, exactly. So when I got into audio, but I wanted to master all of it. So I took classes, and I'm still in them, for video, for film production, and for music recording and engineering. But so the pandemic allowed me to take a breath and go, okay, I can't leave my house for 2 years. I thought it was going to be a year, but it turned into 2.5 years. So what do you want to do? I'm not going to allow this pandemic, or the people that we lost during the pandemic, to go in vain. Let me do something here. And I studied, and we ended up making a record because we were able to. Yeah. And luckily, so now with Panic Boom, Chris McClernand, who is the bass player in Panic Boom, he was in Saigon Kick with me. And so the rhythm section has lived for 30 years together. These guys in Panic Boom were all my lifelong friends. So when we formed the band in '94, and we did this, and Atlantic passed on it, it was kind of like, well, you guys want to re-record something for my documentary? And they said, yeah. So we re-recorded Revolution, which is the new single, which we wrote in '94. Wow. So, but in the process, never got in a room together. So we were doing everything Zoom and FaceTime and stuff like that.
Talk to me about, when I talked to Miles Kennedy recently about the upcoming Slash record, and they recorded that album live in the studio together. And Miles and I went into a long conversation about the blessings of something like Pro Tools versus being able to make things too perfect and polished and strip the attitude out of rock and roll.
Agreed.
When you're recording a song with Panic Boom and you're not in the room together and you're doing it all digitally, how do you avoid that?
Good question. And there's a few things that you miss when you're not in a studio together. Okay. And that is the energy of one another. Because if you're in a studio with 4 guys, 5 guys that you love dearly, and you're telling stories and you're having a good time, that reflects on your playing, right?
Yeah.
Anything reflects on your playing. How we got around that stuff is simple. One, everybody in our band, and Miles can attest to that too, is that we recorded stuff on 2-inch tape our whole life. Okay. That's how we recorded. That there was no alternative. Right. It was like you were good or you were crap. And if you were crap, they found someone good to play your parts or do whatever. So you knew going in that it was like you had to master your profession. So 2-inch tape has always been my friend. I love 2-inch tape. In fact, the last Skid Row record I did, which was in '03, we did it at Johnny Bon Jovi's house, and he had a 2-inch machine. So I got to record. Now, with that said, because we have that, we deserve Pro Tools now, because we can play. And because we can play, we don't need Pro Tools for what people need it for today, which is to correct everything. Right. We don't need that. What we needed was the digital end of it, so we could pass our tracks around, easily. And that's what we did. So we didn't quantize anything. There's no quantizing. It's the minute that you look, with Pro Tools, it's simple. You play a drum track, and I played everything live. So you play a drum track, you could snap it onto the grid. When you snap it onto the grid and it's perfect and quantized, well, you might as well program a drum machine. There's no reason to do that. And we have gone through, and this with your knowledge of being a DJ, that the music that came out probably in the last 10 years, most of it is garbage because it's programmed. There's no heart in it anymore. There's some really great bands. I'm not talking, but producers got lazy. Producers weren't letting drummers play, and there's no heart in this crap anymore. And nobody wants to hear that. I want to hear a drummer screw up, and when I say screw up, when you're a professional and you screw up, you're talking about a stick that'll click or something. I'm not talking about wavy
imperfection.
you're human. Okay. It doesn't, and music to me, and it's my opinion, but I think the last few years has just been missing human and heart, no heart. So when we did this stuff, it was a simple process. Like if the guitar player had an idea, he would send it to me. I did all the arrangement of songs. That was like kind of my forte because I played drums. So I found the tempos. I'd play it to a click track live. I'd bounce my drums, send it to Chris. Chris would play bass on it. And they're playing to me. So, and my stuff I didn't want it perfect. My career, I've always played one beat behind the click because that's how I played. It's like Bonham was.
A click track, for anybody that doesn't know, by the way, because I don't want to lose a non-musician listening to this.
So it's the beats per minute.
Right.
So once you get the BPM on it, like let's say it's 120, I set my click track to 121 because I know I just need that hair. And if you ever listen to Bonham's fills, not that he played a click track, but I love the lazy, like
you almost think he's not going to make it, and then right at the end he's on time, and you're like, how does he do that?
I call it a pair of Nikes in the dryer. But as long as you end up on one, you're good. Right. And Chris and I have been playing together for 30 years. The rhythm section, the rhythm section is your main deal. If you don't lock in, it doesn't even matter if you're in a studio so that was always covered. The guitar, that just floats around. The guitar always floated to me. Like the guitar has the leeway. It has the sounds, it's tight, but it floats.
And the singer can go anywhere he wants.
He can go anywhere he wants, and we do harmonies through Panic Boom. It's all harmonizing and stuff like that. Not on Revolution so much, but on the other songs. So it was a pretty easy deal to get it sounding like we were live together because we played together. Chris and I played together for 30 years.
Anybody that's ever been in a studio with a grease pencil and a razor blade is allowed to cut corners now, because same thing with radio too. Yeah, if you've had a razor blade in your hand, the digital stuff.
Yeah, you know what a copy and paste was back then? It was the 1/4-inch machine, a razor blade, tape, and then
the grease pencil.
Right. And then flying it to the board, re-recording it, and then dropping it in. It's incredible. Those guys were magicians back then. And now it's a copy and paste, which is it's almost like it hurts me every time I do it, but it's necessary. Look, technology, I love technology. I don't like when technology builds somebody and makes them sound good. That sucks. I like when technology is put in the hands of good players and then they create something even more spectacular. And Chris McClernand is producing and mixing all our music. I shoot the videos, I direct them, and I edit them. So that's what our knowledge has given our band, which is two things, as you know, that back in the old days, $200,000 budgets for videos, $300,000 for a record. We launched Revolution, our song, for $17. It's on every streaming platform. It is, and of course we're not going to get paid from streaming, but we have a Bandcamp. And I'll tell you one thing about our fans and fans in general, music fans. And as I include myself in a music fan,
especially music rock fans,
they will pay for it. And we put up on our Bandcamp, we put $1 to buy it. And maybe a couple of people just bought it for $1, but everybody else was $10, $5, $7, whatever you want, whatever you feel you want to pay for it. So the first time, the first sale we had, the first $1 that was bought when it came out, I took a screenshot of it. We have a band thread. I put it on the band thread and I said, "Is this the coolest thing you've ever seen?" Because it meant more to me than anything I've ever done in my career, because it was something we did. It was an idea and it came out and a fan loved it and bought it, and no middlemen. It's like, Bandcamp takes their 10% or whatever and PayPal. So it was the greatest splitting of 75 cents I ever did in my life, and still more money than I made from Atlantic. So right off the bat, we were good.
I have a theory about musicians that musicians always want to be actors and actors want to be musicians and athletes want to be musicians and actors. And it's kind of this thing that flows into each other. And you're a perfect example because you've had a pretty successful acting career as well.
Yeah, I mean, wouldn't say successful, but I had fun.
Well, I'm trying to give you
all.
a compliment, Phil. Come on.
Yeah, thank you. I did a lot of things in my life because I wanted to, not because I wanted to be successful at it, and I've proved that. Thank you. No, but who doesn't want to try to act? Who doesn't want to try to do stand up? So many people are so scared of everything. My mother, God rest her soul, she was scared of flying. I'm not getting on a plane. I'm not. I'm like, why? I go, look, it's an easy thing. You get on the plane, you get there, you don't. You're not going to feel it either way. Who gives a crap, right? But I'm not afraid of anything. So when I left the music business in 05 to go to rehab because I was just out of control and I wanted to live. That was one of my things on the bucket list, living. I decided to do some cool stuff, and I did stand-up comedy. I did acting, and I was fortunate enough that I got on a couple of shows like Californication, and I did some movies, some independent movies. I did TV shows like, Ghost Stories, and I was on Rehab with Dr. Drew. I mean, I just did stuff, I'm not embarrassed about it. It was kind of like, I find those shows and stuff, if you can get on something and you can pay it forward and you can give somebody some information that maybe will help them or steer them in the right direction, why not? But yeah, it was fun. Californication is one of those things. I just got a residual check. I wish I had it handy. I would post it up on this right now, but I think it's like 61 cents or something. But it was fun. I did a scene with Dave Duchovny. His brother was directing. The one funny thing though, that I read for Hungover Rockstar. I was like, oh, this is going to be a stretch for me. And I get in there and I'm doing the scene. And so they're blocking the shot, right? And I had a stand-in, which was hilarious because I had 2 lines, whatever it was. So, but I was in a bed with 5 women, half naked women laying on me for the shot, right? So we did the first shot, and he's like, "Oh, let me block the next angle." And he goes, "All right, Phil, we'll call you when we're ready." I'm like, "I'm not going anywhere."
Yeah, and I don't need a stand-in for this.
They started cracking up. I'm like, you actually think for 1 second I'm getting up out of a bed with 5 half naked women? You're crazy. And they just were like, it just was one of those things. I'm like, you wanted the rock star, well, now you got them, And it was a pleasure doing that stuff. It was fun.
You talk about and mentioned your documentary. You are as far as I know, you are the first person I've had on the show that has gone to sex rehab, that's been in Playgirl, that's been on Oprah.
Yes.
And has your own line of sex toys.
Correct.
That's impressive considering the amount of interviews I've done in my life. I don't think anyone else has those credentials that they can put on a resume.
That's like the hat trick plus one, I think.
Seriously.
That one. Yeah. And that, again, goes to, I always wanted to do Playgirl. I don't know why.
Peter Steele did it.
I just thought, why not? My publicist, Barbara George, who I love dearly, and has been there, 15 years.
She's awesome.
I know. She has seen and dealt with me far too much. But when I did the rehab show, obviously sex rehab, the first thing that everybody wants to do is, like as far as work wise, let's get the guy from sex rehab naked in a magazine. And I was like, yeah, why not? I'll swing some salami. I don't care. Who gives a crap? It's like, I, for one, I am not embarrassed by nudity like the United States is. I mean, I spent a lot of time in Europe. We did 2 records in Sweden where people are naked and no one gives a shit. It's not about, raping people. It's like, we're naked. Well, why is this pornography? And I go to nudist resorts all the time. I love, I call myself a nudist. I think it's wonderful. So if you want to put my ugly ass on a Playgirl, sure, I'll take it. But I remember seeing Peter Steele and his telephone pole in Playgirl. And they must have had 2 coffins for him because I tell you, woof.
I mean, he was a big guy, so we know that sometimes people aren't proportionate and sometimes they are. God has his favorites.
Yeah, they could not close the lid of the coffin on that thing. But and I say that with much respect. I love Peter. But I was the first rock star centerfold, though. Just so we get that straight, because those guys
Steele
were
didn't
not
get the centerfold?
No, he was a feature. And Bret Michaels was a centerfold, but he was dressed.
Right.
And Brad Pitt, but he wasn't a centerfold. So I was the first rock star centerfold, and it was a holiday issue, December, Mr. December. You can address me.
From this
point forward.
Okay, Mr.
Yes.
December.
And I came up with the tag, which was the stockings aren't the only thing hung. So right, because if you're gonna go cheesy, you got to go
all
full
the way.
blast.
Yeah, smoked Gouda. Go there.
Yeah. Now, and then Barbara was there the whole time because we're shooting this in New York, and it was some of the funniest. Like, she was shooting like B-roll stuff, and it's so funny because it was a blast. I was in New York for 2 days. The photographer was a rock photographer. Todd Concord was his name. Amazing photographer, and here he's shooting this naked dude. But we had this one moment I'll tell you about. It was really, really funny. We were shooting in this tiki bar in New York, and the bartender came in to open the club for us during the day, and she was unaware of the shoot. Okay, so I'm in the back getting ready for this. They had a photo booth back there, so I was doing photo booth shots. They're setting up the shot in the front of the bar, where the bar is tendering. And I come walking out naked with Chucks on and a raging hard on, right? And I don't see her. So Todd goes, just sit over here on top of this. They had like booths, He's like, just sit on top of the booth. So I get up on top of the booth, and I still haven't seen her. And I'm like getting ready to go. And I'm like, full mask, got to keep a flag on this thing. And I look up and there she is. And she's just like, and I go, hi. How you doing? She's like, what?
I'm Mr. December.
Yeah. I go, can we just call this our first date? And then she started cracking up because she was shocked, by this whole thing. And it was a blast. And we had this really great assistant, one of his assistants, and he was gay. He was a gay man. And he was so fun. And I would always look at him and go, how's it look? And he's like, ready. And
if
that's
it looks
where I
good
got
to him, then that's good advice.
I'm in, right? And that's how we did it. So yeah, it was a blast. And then the sex toy line just came off of that, and I did a celebrity sex tape because everybody was doing it. Kim Kardashian had just done it, Tommy and Pam. My original one was going to be with one of the girls from Jersey Shore, because the whole thing is crap. It's all set up. There's no the maid stole it. So it was a very funny conversation. I'm on the phone with her name was Angelina. Yep. I think she was in the first season.
Yeah.
And so we have our agents we're like, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to go to Florida for a weekend. I'm going to shoot everything. We have all this sex. We go crazy on the beach in Fort Lauderdale. I go, then I'm going to release it. You sue me for releasing it. The whole plan, it was out of control. And then we all agree, Vivid is like, yeah, let's do it. And then a couple of days later, she bailed from it. She didn't want to do it after all. So I ended up doing a groupies one. But again, it was just like, it's such smoke and mirrors, that whole thing. And then the sex toy line. It was all linked together because it was all in one lump. And I just want to let everybody know that I had my penis molded, not mold in a sense of that'll kill you, but actually a mold.
No, it's a process you want it to be authentic. I have a lot of military friends that did the take-home mold so that they could make a toy for their wives before they deployed, so their wife would have them at home with them.
I think it's called Clone a Willy, that stuff.
Yes, exactly.
That one, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. This one was made. I went to Doc Johnson, and they do all anything. They do female, male. They do everybody's, right. And the guy doing it is hilarious. And what they do is, what a sense of, you got to have a sense of humor, because there's a very awkward 3 minutes waiting for that stuff to set. Okay, that's basically. I
was going to ask you about that, and I was hoping you'd get to it before I did.
Yeah, well, they use the dental paste, right?
Yeah,
and it doesn't and he put some on my leg. It doesn't pull hair out. It's very interesting. It dries on it dried on my leg, but you could see every hair the indentations of it, but it never pulls anything out. It's really, really wild. But it takes 3 minutes, right? So here, and I have the whole thing on tape. I should release this thing because it's really funny. There's nothing sexual about it at all. It's so damn funny if you want to see the process.
Oh, I do.
Yeah. And he's mixing this bucket of stuff. And he's like, he's in there. And then you take a tube that looks like a like the front of a recorder. You know the recorders when you're in school, like the mouth? It looks like that. And he fills it. He goes, "You're ready?" I'm like, "Yeah." And I go running over there with, and it's just, I mean, the whole thing is hilarious. Now, the girl from Cal Exotic, my friend, she's filming the whole thing. And again, it's like, it's just everybody involved. It's so funny, the setting, right? And because there's nothing sexual, it's just pure comedy. So I go and I stick my thing in this tube, and he's dumping this dental stuff in there, like just dumping it in there and pushing it down and all this other stuff. And that stuff is so cold. It was like, so the idea is to get it while it's wicked hard, and then it hardens around it. So you get the diameter, because it's going down. It's like jumping in an ice water,
Oh.
It was like that. And the stuff is like, so he puts it all in, and then he's done. And now he's standing next to me holding it up on this. So I go, you come here often? And we just start laughing because he's like right there.
Oh, right.
And I'm just like, do. And he starts
Don't
telling
make
me
eye
stories.
contact. Don't make eye contact.
So funny.
Do you know I was Mr. December?
What's that?
Do you know I was Mr. December?
It was telling me all these crazy stories about women that came in. Like he goes, "Yeah, this woman came in, and it was a porn star, but she was on her period." And I said, "Oh, so did you make a candle? Was it her shoot about a candle?" I mean, they're putting silicone on, and we just were doing bits like that. So, but let me just say this. It's one thing to get turned down by a woman as a man, but when your penis gets discontinued, let me tell you something. You don't come back from that.
No, that's tough, man.
I thought I had a handsome penis, but apparently the masses did not.
Well, now your penis is a collectible.
Yeah, except it looks like it's been in a fire, but that's another story. I spoke to some dermatologists, and they have a penis rejuvenation thing.
They have rejuvenation for vaginas too.
Yeah, but because I want a gentleman's penis, I want a pink, excited, new penis again, because mine has just seen it. It's mad at me.
It could be mad at you from overuse, Phil.
Because you put it in weird places, and it didn't like that. So yeah, no, it is definitely. I look like it's been through it's definitely a fire victim, but it's getting better.
I tell guys that all the time. I'm like, that's supposed to be your most prized possession, and yet you choose to put it in places that you know are very dangerous. Very dangerous, very dark, very sharp. Not sometimes smelling white. Yeah, smelling good. Bad.
Yeah, I'm going to go for the penis rejuvenation. I think I'm going to go for that. I got to find someone to do it, though. That's the most embarrassing thing. I mean, how do you do this? And it's going to be a laser peel.
And it's going to hurt.
It's going to hurt bad.
If it hurts to get a tattoo taken off, I can only imagine what it's going to do to your penis. Oof.
Yeah, because they're going to take a couple of layers off. Yeah. But I want one of those nice new ones. It looks like it has still has the price tag on it. Like it's never.
One of those teenage ones that hasn't been abused yet.
Yeah, it just hasn't been molested or weird and beat up and pulled on, all that stuff. So yeah, so that's on the bucket list.
Every time I have a musician on the show, I always ask this question because there's no wrong answer and they're always interesting. As a songwriter yourself, can you give me an example or two of songwriting that you think is perfect? A song you covet and wish you wrote from any artist of any genre, of any era, but break it down from a songwriter's perspective and tell me why you think it's a good example of songwriting. And they come up all the time. Go ahead.
Let's start here. Let It Be is my all-time. I would turn the cameras because on my wall I have Let It Be lyrics. I have the documentary. Now I went into the documentary because like everybody told me it was amazing, and I got scared because there's some things you just shouldn't see.
Yeah.
In my opinion, right? Like it's like you don't want to see the pilots when you get on a plane. You don't want it's just it's known. You get
it's
there.
the Wizard of Oz. Like it's perfect
Right.
with the curtains closed.
Drawn.
Right.
Yeah, you cannot. I don't want the curtain open. Now, I did not know that this was the session for Let It Be, the record, which is my all-time favorite Beatles record. So I'm watching this thing with no preconceived anything. I just wanted to watch it. I told everybody, I was like, don't tell. I just want, because the Beatles, that's how much they mean to me.
They're my favorite band too.
Right.
I'm right there with you.
Okay. So I start watching this thing and I go, wait a minute. What are they writing here? They start writing songs. I just thought it was going to be a rehearsal for a TV show. I didn't know they were writing Let It Be. And I stopped it. And I was like, I got to regroup here. Hold on a second. Because right now I'm getting the ultimate, what I've dreamt about for years was to be a fly on the wall to watch the Beatles write a song. Okay. Like, because they're not human to me. You know, like that's, and I watched this wonderful documentary that I highly recommend called Under the Volcano, which is a story. It's the documentary of Sir George Martin's studio, the Air Studio in the Caribbean. And that studio produced.
Rick Nielsen was on the show from Cheap Trick and told me what it was like to work with him. And I was just like, oh my God.
Yeah, that's like that's a head explosion of beyond. So I'm watching this thing and then so they're writing songs and I'm like, holy crap, they're just writing songs. Because the first part of it is not really, you don't know it's Let It Be.
Right.
Until Paul starts tickling the ivory and Let It Be comes out. And I just start weeping.
I cried
wait
too.
a minute. I'm like, wait a minute here. He's writing Let It Be right now. And John Lennon they're all goofing around. But there was a split second where they perked up because they know what a good song is, right? And I stopped it so many times because I couldn't take it.
There were points where I looked at it and it was like, I thought it was like a deep fake. Because you've seen, or at least we thought we had seen everything that the Beatles had ever done. Every photo, every video. And then all of a sudden there's these hours of unseen video. And I kept looking at it like, this is real?
Yeah, I didn't believe it was real either.
Yeah,
I thought it was, like you said.
So
I thought
crazy.
I thought it was fake. I because we shouldn't have seen this.
Yeah.
These are gods to me. I shouldn't have seen this. But I'm so happy I did.
And it's been locked somewhere for 50 years.
And as an editor, right? The minute that's like, I'm texting with my editor friend and I'm like, did you see the colorization? Did you see the color correction? Have you seen the edits of this thing? They created at a film that and if you know anything about film editing and stuff, there's a point where film is so long gone. And you have to bring the colors back in. And when you bring the colors back in, things suffer. Like you'll see really pink lips or you'll see pink things around eyes. That is like film that is shot. And they brought it back to this beautiful, like I was amazed. But what I took from it the most was the absolute love of four guys in a band. And those guys loved each other to no end. There was a love between McCartney and John Lennon, and Ringo was clearly, you know what really got me? When they called him Richie.
Yeah.
I just like, and John would be like, hey, Richie, and I'm just like, holy crap, you call him Richie. Like and Chris McClernand and the guys in my band, but Chris McClernand is probably my best friend in the world. And that's how I love him. Like you just,
you don't have to get along. It's a brother thing.
Bands have that and don't have that. Because with that love comes respect. You have to respect each other. And what I loved most about that was the love and respect because, when Ringo was working out a song and George just came over and started playing with him and doing the chords. And then one of my favorite moments outside of all that was when George Martin comes in. Sir George comes in and goes, as a producer, you're not ready. And I was like, oh. They just told the Beatles they're not ready.
Yeah.
I was like, yeah,
And he's the only one that could do that.
The only one.
Yeah.
And I thought that was probably the greatest piece of cinema I've ever seen in my life. So back to your question, Let It Be has always been the most perfect song ever. Like there's nothing, and not to mention because it reminds me of my mother. My mother passed in 98. It was like her song. Like it was one of those songs.
My mom gave me the gift of loving music. Yeah. And it was through the Beatles. And so I totally understand that is music is that way. It's that amazing gift that we get that goes right to our memories of the people we love, for sure.
Yeah. I felt so sad for losing John Lennon so soon.
Oh.
Because I didn't even understand how funny he was and how wonderful he was. I like Yoko because of this.
I just kept going, does she have to knit right there? Why is she sitting there knitting? Could she just go over there and knit? Does she need to be in that circle and knit?
Right? Wasn't that weird? Because
it was weird.
When Linda Eastman walked in, she was still across the room, which I still believe that her and Ringo had something cooking.
Interesting.
I don't care what anybody says. I mean, when she walked into the room, Ringo lit up, and so did she.
Yeah.
And I know there's something about it, and they could be swingers. Who knows? I mean, I'm a swinger, so maybe they did.
Yeah, it did.
But there was a couple of things that got me. One is they scared Peter Sellers away, which was the greatest thing I've ever seen, because Peter Sellers walked in and was like, "Oh, I gotta go now."
Yeah.
I'm like, Peter Sellers.
Yeah.
I'm like, he's the Pink Panther.
Yeah.
What the hell's going on here? He's Clouseau, for God's sake. But also too, when George left because of whatever was going down for that time, and Paul came in, and they were talking about, like, because he didn't know if John was going to show up, and he was clearly visibly upset, and they were talking about how the only thing that got, because John was so in love with Yoko that they didn't have time to write like they used to, and he missed them.
Yeah.
And I just thought that was sad and sweet at the same time. But boy, that was a documentary, man.
And after seeing the Rick Rubin one, where he sat down with McCartney,
I haven't seen that one yet. That's the next one.
Okay, so you got to watch it, because there's one part of it, and I don't want to give it away too much because I want you to see it, but McCartney broke down how his upbringing and Lennon's upbringing leaks into their songwriting, and how the difference weaves together to create the Beatles.
Yes, of course.
And since I saw that, it changed the way I listened to the music. And then when I saw the documentary that you're talking about, all I could think about was, maybe she's sitting there knitting because John needs her to be sitting there knitting.
Oh, he does.
And then I was like, do I got to give Yoko a break? Because John wants her there. And so I had to.
I gave Yoko a break on that.
Yeah.
And the reason why too is that just what you said, I haven't seen that part that you were talking about.
Yeah.
But there is the tell was John Lennon said, if it's Yoko or the Beatles, I'm picking Yoko.
Yeah.
And Yoko, those two, she was his muse.
Right.
Period. He wanted her there.
Yeah.
Period. He wanted her that close. So this whole Yoko thing is really funny. Now, Chris McClernand in our band, he said that he went out. He was in New York where John had passed away, and in front of the gates. And all of a sudden, there's some commotion, and here comes Yoko, and she's in a wheelchair. She's being pushed by it was a rapper was with her. Forgot who it was, a hip hop artist, and security. Right, the gates open, and Chris is just standing there. And Yoko, they wheel her by, and Yoko looks up at him and goes, "Hi, how are you doing?" She's the one that said hello. And he was just like, I'm really great, Yoko Ono. Like, what?
Yeah, like she's somebody you have to refer to by two names, because you wouldn't dare just say Yoko.
God forbid, that is just disrespectful.
I know.
And I said, yeah, well, she's just a Beatle as much as anything else. She has more controversy. And the Beatles broke up far before Yoko had anything to do with it.
They made all that music before they turned 32, which just blew my mind. That it was
they're kids.
They're kids.
Kids. Like I'm like, and you know what I loved about this so much was the way they dressed going into the studio.
Yeah.
Ringo was always cool, man. Like they all were cool. And what I started doing, which I loved, was everybody that was in those, like their tour manager that wrote all the words down for them.
Yeah.
All those guys. I started Googling them, going, "I wonder if they're alive." And he's long past.
Can you imagine if you could say, like, that's my grandfather right there?
Right. Well, somebody can.
Right.
Because these guys, but mostly I looked up the cop. The cop is there. He's alive. The one that came up there, that one that had the red cheeks and he was trying to, and they were so polite, but it was like, and I'm thinking in my brain, I'm like, when this guy went onto the roof to try to shut the Beatles down, did he understand the magnitude of what was about to happen to him? Like, did he understand that he just let it be down? Like, are you insane? And I loved the interviews on the street, like older gentlemen and stuff are like, oh, the Beatles, I love them. And then there's other people like, it's noise. Yeah. I'm like, it's the Beatles.
I know. Could you shut up for 2 seconds?
My God, man. It was great. I can't say enough, but it was one of those, it touched me. And it took me a long time to watch it. It's over like a week. Because emotionally, I was drained.
I'm going through it for the second time now because I know I missed so much of it because I was in such awe the first time.
Yeah, between crying and yelling and applauding, I missed most of it too. It was crazy.
I feel so bad for people that listen to my show all the time because it's like they must think that I pay you guys to talk about the Beatles because everybody knows what a fan I am. And then they just always keep coming up. And I don't understand how people cannot be fans of the Beatles. Right. But people that hate the Beatles must just hate my show at this point because they always come up.
People that hate the Beatles are terrible people. That's all I have to say. I mean, how can you hate the Beatles?
I don't know. But I guess
like
people
hating
do.
Henry Fonda or something. That's weird. How can you hate that? That's like hating sitting on a cloud, eating like a pastrami sandwich, with no care in the world. How can you hate the Beatles? Those are awful, awful people. Yeah.
How do you really feel, Phil, or Mr. December?
Mr. December, thank you very much. You can get the Rolling Stones Beatles argument all the time.
Yeah.
It's like, how about you can't like them both?
Yeah, you can like them both. And there's also the Beatles Elvis thing too, where it's like you got to pick both of those arguments. I picked the Beatles, but obviously respect for Elvis, love the Stones.
Yeah, but the Beatles took Elvis off the top.
Yeah.
And Elvis respected the Beatles and he phoned them and gave them, welcome. That's cool. That's what you should do. The passing of the torch.
Right.
But the Rolling Stones are an incredible band. I wasn't a Rolling Stones crazy fan, but I love their music. I respect Chuck Watts. Charlie Watts, by far the coolest drummer. Just a cool. So it's like but these people get crazy. It's like do you believe? I told this story before because it's so ridiculous that I have to it's funny because it just happened recently. So I'm on Facebook and my Facebook page is about being positive. Okay. I like to have a good time.
You've been through a lot. Just focus on the good.
Right. Facebook is a cesspool. Okay. And I don't want that near me. Right. So I have fun. I have fun with this. So there happened to be one of those memes running around that said, there's 4 things on there. One has to go. It was Amazon, Starbucks, Target, and Chick-fil-A. One of those has to go. All right. And so I put Chick-fil-A. Right. I'm not a Chick-fil-A fan, but also the owners of them are bigots and they're hypocrites because their upbringing. So I hate that. I hate people like that. But I say, the owners are hypocrites and their chicken is like low-grade dog food that I wouldn't feed to a dog. Being funny because low-grade dog food is from Caddyshack. So apparently they don't get it. So there's 700 responses to this thing, right? And I'm not on Facebook where I live for that Facebook. I just go on there. I say hi to my fans or whatever. And I start reading them. I'm like, these people are brutal. Like they're going crazy. You're wrong. How do you know I'm wrong? Like, do you work there?
Do you own it? You're defending it to the end.
The owner,
right?
Even the owner would probably say, "Hey, Phil, why don't you try it again at least?" And I say, "No, you're a bigot and a hypocrite, and you can F yourself." But anyways, so down the line, and then the funniest comment was, "Oh yeah, see, it's been 2 hours since he's been on here, so he knows he's wrong. He doesn't want to comment." I was like, "No, because I have a life.
Yeah,
that's why I was actually, I don't know, releasing music and
walking
enjoying
my dog."
Life. Yeah, and not being angry over bad chicken. So I finally I put a message on there because I just had to because there was on the defense of many people. They were like, "Dude, that chicken sucks anyways. They knew, and people that did any research knew that they were bigots. And, and I said, well, I go, listen, number one, do you understand that you're fighting over chicken? Let's just start there. I go, do you own the company? It's like you have stake in it. I said, but do something you've never done in your life. Do some research, okay? And you will find that the owner is a bigot and hypocrite, okay? And if you are okay with that, then you are one too. So enjoy your shitty chicken and have a wonderful day. And because it was like, are you insane? You're fighting over chicken. There are homeless people. There are children dying. There are people getting shot, and you're screaming over bad chicken.
There's a pandemic.
Like, hello. And let me tell you something. Their chicken sucks. I don't care. And then you read this thing about Popeyes where people are in line and they're trying to get this chicken sandwich, and they're shooting people for the chicken sandwich. And I had this chicken sandwich, and I would shoot somebody too because it's delicious. But I hate Chick-fil-A. That's all I'm trying to say. Thank you.
So you brought up Charlie Watts, and as a drummer in the last couple of years, we've lost players like Charlie Watts. We've lost Neil Peart. I mean, these are, as a guitar player looking at the loss of Eddie Van Halen, these guys are just irreplaceable, and it's impossible to measure the influence.
No, Eddie Van Halen, I hate guitar players. And Eddie Van Halen, no, I'm kidding. Eddie Van Halen was single-handedly probably one of the most influential guitar players for rock and roll. I mean, it was Yngwie back then, obviously, but before him, Jimi Hendrix. And he's in a small category, of incredibly talent and people that changed the instrument. You got to think of it. Neil Peart was one of those who changed the instrument. My very close friend Vinnie Paul, we lost. And I was telling a story to my friend, and funny because I just got a text from Barbara, Papa George, and Blabbermouth picked up what I was talking about because Vinnie Paul, I had a failed Ozzy audition, and because Vinnie Paul set it up for me. But it was crazy, like to lose all these people and these innovators of music and such talent. And
it's going to be a really rough next 5 years because all of these musicians that changed everything, they can't live forever. I mean, you talk about Ringo and Paul McCartney.
Yeah. I mean, I want to meet Ringo. If I met Paul McCartney, I don't know if I can handle it.
No.
It's a weird thing because I always thought, as a musician, we have fans that come up to you and they're like, oh, you're my favorite drummer. And I'm so damn grateful for that because I'm just a dude that plays drums. But I know how how we influence people, as Tommy Lee influenced me. And when I met Tommy for the first time, my head almost exploded, right? And it was a wonderful meeting. It was just great. It's the sad case is that like now I'm 54 and those guys, I forget that they're 70s. Ted Nugent, Meatloaf, and Bob Saget, so young,
Dusty
and
Hill,
Louis Anderson, all these people that we love, David Bowie. I mean, you name it, it goes down the line, and Keith Richards is still standing.
I know.
That's all. I don't know how.
JJ French on the show told me this amazing story where he got introduced to Keith Richards' gastroenterologist at a party. I know, the most random sentence that's ever been said on my show ever.
Yeah, said only one person.
Right.
Yeah.
And he went up and was talking to him, and he said, so you're Keith Richards' gastroenterologist? And he was like, yeah. And he's like, can I ask you something? And he was like, yeah, but I won't be able to answer it. And he said, I bet you'll be able to answer this because of HIPAA, obviously. Right. And he said, this is what JJ French from Twisted Sister said, are even you amazed? And the doctor said, yes. It's one of the greatest stories ever.
That is a great question.
Yeah.
What a wonderful question.
Because it was worded perfectly.
Yeah, because that's just, oh my God, that's so funny.
So funny.
It'll be a sad day when we lose many of our idols.
Yeah.
I just did a drum expo with with Greg Bissonette, who plays with Ringo Starr. Okay. And Greg is the sweetheart of sweethearts. I love him. And we did this wonderful thing for breast cancer. It was all these great drummers. But I was like, Greg, so Ringo, come on. I video.
Can you hook a brother up?
Yeah, my company did all the promo for we donated the promo. So I was doing all their packages, and I'm pulling up video of Greg Bissonette with Ringo, and all I see is a smile. I mean, how can you not?
How can you not?
Right? So I go, dude, what the, tell me, I want to, just give me something. And he goes, well, we're working on a master class right now for him, which they just put the promos out for.
Yep.
So Greg was working with Ringo and showing him, the masterclass setup, because Greg is an incredibly talented player, schooled. And he goes, I go, that must have been I would have to pinch myself. He goes, well, it gets better. I said, how? He goes, well, he FaceTimed Paul McCartney. And I was like, wait a minute. And he goes, hey, Paul, check out what Greg's showing me. I go, so you're on the phone, you're with Ringo, Paul McCartney's on FaceTime. So you have the Beatles with you, is what you're saying.
Yeah.
I was like, and I'm like, so when you woke up, did they have the smelling salt? He goes, it was really amazing. That was one of those things. Because when you're with Ringo, I guess you would get kind of used to.
Right. That he's a person and he's talking to you and it's fine.
Yeah. And you're in a band.
But
and
then
all
his
that
friend
stuff.
Paul chimes in.
And then you realize that it's the Beatles all of a sudden.
Right.
Because one guy is one thing, but then the Beatles chime in and you're like, everything that's ever happened to you in life is because these two men. What, are you kidding me musically? And Ringo is one of the greatest, most underrated drummers of all time. So it's, so I was just getting stories from him. And I just hope I have something like that. When Paul McCartney dies, I will be in mourning. Yeah. For a very, 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 very long time.
I tell people I was in the same room with Paul McCartney because I was at the Super Bowl in Jacksonville when he played the halftime show.
You're in the same room. I'll take it. You're in it. You got closer than I did.
I watched the Patriots win the Super Bowl and a Beatle during the halftime show. It was one of the greatest days of my life.
I mean, for a Bostonian, that's got to be are you a Beatles fan from Boston? You can't get any better unless friggin' Mocky Mock came walking in and hung out with you in the suite, which I absolutely love. The Wahlberg. I was so sad to hear that Elma died.
I know.
Their mom.
I know.
My God, I loved her so much. She was she's like my mom.
Yeah.
She was since losing my mom so long ago, I was like, she's my mom.
Yeah.
Every week I tuned in so I could see her.
Yeah.
And just live. I love them so much. And I love that damn show with Paulie and stuff. I love those guys. I would love, and Mark is wonderful, but Paulie's a star.
No, the family is, and what's funny is that they're like every family from that neighborhood or whatever.
Right,
it's
right.
That's just how everybody is. Yeah.
Yeah. Because I love when all the interviews, those guys were just terrorizing the neighborhood, everything you did as a kid.
Oh, yeah.
You just went crazy, and I love that show. So that's Boston definitely came up with some good people out of Boston.
Yeah. We've had some pretty good rock and roll come out of here too.
So now that the GOAT's gone, what are you doing over there? Do you follow Tampa? What do you do?
Yeah, they're the Patriots South.
Yeah, basically, when he woke the Gronk up, I love me some Gronk, and I'm like, how the hell is he playing this guy?
I know.
It's like
bionic.
waking Joe. It's like waking Joe up and being like, Joe, you got to run for president. I'm like, I'm napping. Leave me alone. Let me retire, you people. Get the hell out of here.
That was a rough day. The very early stage of the pandemic, they canceled the St. Patrick's Day parade in South Boston. And on the same day, Tom Brady announced he was leaving. And we were all just like, what do we
I don't think I've been. When I heard Brady went to Tampa, I thought it was a joke.
Yeah.
I really
were talking about the teams he would go to. And I was like, Tampa's a shithole. He'd never go there.
Yeah, I thought it was a joke. Number one, I think Tom Brady is the greatest quarterback of all time. Yeah. You can say what you want about
There's no debate. It's like people that hate the Beatles. No. You're just wrong.
Yeah, you're just wrong. And the only reason why I hated Tom Brady is because he wasn't playing for my New York Football Giants. Other than that, I love the guy.
And you guys got him. You guys got to him twice, and good on you. You broke our hearts twice.
Yeah, but for that, I have 40 years of heartbreak.
Right.
But that goes the good and the bad. But I don't know if you saw this show. It's called The Shop, and it's on HBO. Okay, and it's LeBron James.
Oh, I have seen it. Yeah.
Okay, well, Tom Brady was on it. And if you want any respect, I saw Tom Brady on this show, and I was like, not only do I respect him as a athlete, because I never really understood. I didn't know him because he never talked. He was always, everything was politically correct.
That's the Patriots way that you don't.
Right. Well, he talked on this damn show.
Oh, yeah.
He talked. And I was like, that guy he is the GOAT.
Yeah.
I loved everything about it because he wasn't this polished dude that had to give props after a gig.
Right.
He was like, he talked.
Yeah.
And I was like, boom, there he is right there. And I liked what I saw. And I think most people, I recommend if you don't like Tom Brady, outside of the fact that he's not on your team, because that's why we hate it. But I mean, in general, there isn't a football fan alive that will not say he's the greatest player of all time, period.
Yeah.
And I mean, Johnny U, I watched Namath play, and again, with Giants, Phil Simms, you talk about Starbuck, you go the football, quarterbacks that are, he is the guy. I've never seen anything like it. He's Ivan Drago is what he is. That's what he's Draga.
You must die.
You must. And then and when we beat him, and I say we, like I was on the team.
I saw you on the field. It was impressive.
Yeah. It was when Rocky gave him the shot and let Drago bleed. He is a man.
Yeah.
We're like, yes. But yeah, that was something else. But boy, I just love watching him play. It's incredible. But yeah, I like the Gronk. I like all them guys, man. It's and I think all I know is that I give total respect for Gronk's parents, his mom. His mom spit out 3 giants. How many are there?
There's
monsters,
4,
these guys.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. Mother's Day, she better be getting diamonds and Rolls Royces.
Woof. Yeah. Man, talk about, that is something else. But anyways, yeah. So
well, I'm ending the show because I got a Giants fan to say nice things about Tom Brady.
Hey.
Done.
Maybe he'll go to the Giants. He did just have to pay him $200 million a year. That's all.
Don't. I can't handle it.
Listen to me. What's going to happen is, because he'll win the Super Bowl again this year because he has to.
Yeah.
He'll because he's
just
going
to drive the knife deeper in our chest.
What is he making now? 30-something million a year.
Knows?
Giants got the cash. Let's get him over. He needs to end in the great state of New York with the Gronk.
No.
Let's put some true blue on him.
Oh, you're killing me. You're killing me.
I will retire my Lawrence Taylor jersey and put on a Tom Brady one if he comes to the blue. That's all I'm saying. That's it.
All right, Mr. December, knock it off.
Do you need a magazine? I'll send you one.
Yeah.
You can put it right behind you.
You can find the links to Panic Boom, all the websites, the socials, everything in the show notes of this episode. Thank you so much for coming on the show. It was so nice to meet you.
Oh, you as well. This was wonderful. I really dug it. Hopefully we can come back again.
Yeah, I would love it. I would absolutely love it. More. Sure, absolutely.
Yeah. Excellent.
All right, we'll see you later. Enjoy the rest of your coffee.
Thank you. You too.
See ya.
Bye.
See, I told you this episode was fun. There he is, the one and only Phil Varone, my new coffee partner, Mr. December. And I'm still waiting for that autographed issue of Playgirl to arrive in the Mistress Carrie mailbox. If you liked what you heard, don't forget to hit subscribe and follow so you don't miss anything from the Mistress Carrie podcast. New full-length episodes come out every Wednesday. Plus, every weekday, you get the Situation Report. The Sit Rep has all your rock news, music headlines, and industry info in less than 5 minutes. And don't forget to check out the show notes of this episode. You can check out the custom playlist that has all of the music that we talked about. You can also find Phil Varone online, get more information about his band Panic Boom and the 30 Years a Drummer documentary, and you'll find all of my links as well. Thanks once again to our sponsor, Digital Federal Credit Union. Find them online at dcu.org. You can find me online at mistresscarrie.com for my events calendar, my blog, the photo gallery, and the official online Mistress Carrie store. And you can find me every Tuesday night at 8:30 Eastern live on my Facebook page for Cocktails in the War Room. The Mistress Carrie Podcast, a proud member of the Pantheon Podcast Network.